Okay, didn't forget. Well, welcome in everyone. You got Peter and I on here today, and it looks to me like we're wearing the exact same shirt. This was not are you wearing the blue volley shirt?
I'm wearing long sleeve.
Ah, darn, darn. We almost matched. So let's go ahead and give it another 30 or 60 seconds, and then let's get started here. We have a lot of people still joining. But this should be a good session here today, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm excited. We have a bunch of Volley people. I'm going to teach them how to cheat on their jobs as well. So this should be fun. I hope it's fun.
Well, good. It should be a great session. Let's get started here with today's session. Peter, what I want to do here is just throw it over to you to kind of get things kicked off. But I want everyone here who's in to know that as Peter's going through, feel free to put any questions that you have in the Q&A here on the Zoom down below, and we'll get to those either throughout or at the end. We'll have dedicated time for questions that have come up. So with that said, using AI in your BDC with Volie CTO Peter Sperry. Peter, take it away.
Well, thanks, Jake. Really excited to be here with all of you today. Just for kind of a backstory on this, and some of you saw the video that Jake and I did late last year about the genesis of this 4 session series, is that when we started to look at how we could use AI both internally at Volley and externally in the product, we had to do a lot of learning. AI was relatively new to the ChatGPT launch, of course, made everybody aware of it. And what I didn't want to do as one of the people in charge of what our product is and a lot of the policies that we have internally, what I didn't want to do is just jump right on board and um, make a lot of mistakes that early adopters tend to make in any new technology. And so what I did is I waited for a while and waited for the tool set to really get to a place of maturity. And then I said I would never do this again. After I graduated from college, I said I'd never go back to school. Well, I ate those words and I went back to school. I took some extension courses that were offered by a couple of the universities that I had attended in the past and really immersed myself in what is an LLM? What is AI? What does it even mean? And then also how to take advantage of it, how to use it for small things and big things. And as some of you know that are either closer to us internally or externally, we've built out an AI team now as part of the Volley development team that is solely focused on using AI in the product. But we get enough questions from our dealers, and frankly, I've gotten a lot of questions internally from our folks where they are saying, "Hey, I'm trying to use ChatGPT to do X, or I'm trying to create some sort of an agenda or maybe an email series, et cetera. Is that something I could use AI for?" And so enough of these questions came up where I thought maybe everybody could benefit from that. So this is a 4 course seminar, webinar, etc. The next one will be in late April. Look for scheduling on that to come to your calendars. Today's is really going to be probably the most heady one, although we'll try to make it interactive and fun. But really, what I wanted to focus on today was just kind of the basics, and then we will go from there. And Jake, any questions or anything we need to do before I get started, or should I just pull up my slide deck and we can get going?
Yeah, I think that's great, Peter. I think that we should pull up the slides and get rolling. And again, if any questions or anything come up, put them down below, and we appreciate you all taking the time here. Like Peter had said, this really is meant to be an educational value presentation for you. This was kind of something that came up. Like he said, we did that video at the end of last year, teasing this. This was just something that Peter wanted to do because he's learned a lot and he wanted to share it with you all. So it's not any more complicated than that. And Peter, I see you got your slides up. Let's roll.
Yeah. So we titled it Using AI in Your BDC. Really what this course will focus on is a particular segment of AI, which is the LLM or large language model. So we'll go through, here's a course outline. I didn't do any fancy animations. So for those of you who came expecting that this would be a whiz bang slide presentation, my team internally knows this. This is about as far as uncool as I get. So first thing we'll go through is what are LLMs? Second thing, quickly, what are the most popular LLMs? Third, how do they work? And why is it important maybe to understand a little bit about how they worked? And then the bulk of today's session will be spent on prompts and prompt patterns. So first thing is, what is a prompt? And then what are prompt patterns? And the last thing we'll do is just more of an open-ended thing. I hope that this gets pretty interactive with the team, and Jake will rapid fire me any questions that come up. But what are some ways that we might be able to leverage LLMs in the BDC or in the dealership as a whole? If there are repetitive tasks or data munching that you're doing on a repetitive basis, maybe we could explore some of those. In future courses, we will go into depth on things like script generation, rebuttal generation, agent training, et cetera. But just as a way to cap off today's session, I wanted to open it up at the very end to, brainstorming. You got a brain buster that we can maybe solve interactively. So hopefully you come armed with that as we're going through the first part. I hope that you all write some things down or maybe have some examples that we could do together. So just a quick disclaimer, in no way, shape, or form would I propose to be an expert on this. I have spent a lot of time in it, both on the prompt and LLM side, as well as on the development and integration side. So I know a few tricks, but I'm not opposed to learning new things. And I certainly realize that every day I'm humbled by what I don't know. So without any further delay, what are LLMs? So I won't read this word for word, but I'll get probably pretty close. LLMs are large language models, and LLMs are a type of AI, and they are designed to process and generate human-like language. So most of you on this call have probably done some experimenting and used ChatGPT. If you have kids that are in school, they've probably tried to use it to write a paper or do their homework. But really the power of LLMs is that they are conversational. So they are trained. So all of the LLMs that are out there are trained on multiple data sources, and they are trained on an incredible number of data sources. So vis-a-vis the entire internet or the publicly available internet, any other source documents, et cetera. And what this does is it allows them to learn patterns of human language, and it allows them to inference context within that language as well. So they are characterized by just having huge scale. So right now in the United States, it's estimated that by the year 2032, that there will not be enough energy production in this country to fuel the needs of training large language models and training AI. That's how expensive and how expansive the training of these models are. So some of these models, Facebook Meta, for example, has multiple models, and they are trained on billions of parameters. And what it does is it allows them to capture things like nuances of language and sarcasm, humor, grammar, syntax, semantics, and then how we put sentences together. So some key features of the LLMs, language understanding. They can understand or comprehend and interpret human language, including context, tone, and intent. And we use some of this for our products internally at Volie. And so some of you who have seen some of our demos on a product we call Pulse would be familiar with some of this. Text generation. So because they are trained to understand human language, they can also generate output that mirrors coherent and contextually relevant human text. And often it's indistinguishable from human conversation. Language translations. So LLMs are not just trained in English. They are trained in multiple languages and understand the cultural nuances of putting languages together. It's not just literal translation. It's oftentimes contextually and linguistically correct formulations of alternative languages outside of English. One of the things that but we're working on at Volie is the ability for agents to automatically translate text messages or incoming emails into a language that the customer or they themselves are more familiar with. And then they're conversational. This is a huge one. So often when you are interacting with an LLM, you'll do it in a very conversational tone. In fact, a recent study by OpenAI found that most of their interactions, over 50% of their interactions, use words like please and thank you when they are talking to the ChatGPT interface. So they use human relevant, and the way that you would talk to a human is the way that people speak with them or text with them, I guess. The most popular LLM by far, ChatGPT. ChatGPT took about a month to get to the level of scale that Facebook got to in 5 years. So it had incredibly fast adoption. It was the first really to publish and popularize this language and chat model for interacting with the LLMs. And GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Model. And really all it is it's a chat-based interface for one of these large language models. And so they made that method of interaction popular. Claude, which is a LLM that was developed by Anthropic, it is a very predominant tool in creatives as well as software developers. So Claude is used almost universally on our own internal team here at Volie. Claude is being very aggressive about capturing the development community for doing things like writing code, writing tests, writing documentation, et cetera, but also for writers who are and content publishers like search engine optimization and website optimization are using Claude to generate very compelling text, literature, et cetera. Llama is a product that is open source by Facebook or Meta, and it's incredibly widely used in research and in mobile because it's open source. So Meta has released Llama under an open license so that you can use it for both commercial and non-commercial purposes, and you can host it internally. So this could save you some money, but really what it saves you is if you want to develop custom models or custom training for LLMs, Llama is a really good way for you to do that. And they also have really good image generation, all just perfectly integrated into their UI and some of their apps. Grok is a somewhat recent entry, although, who knows what's been worked on for how long, but Grok has become really popular over the last 6 to 12 months, mainly because Twitter is pushing it, Elon is pushing it. It's also kind of funny. One of the nuances of Grok is that they wanted to make it understand things like sarcasm. It references previous conversations and makes jokes. And so we'll go through some of that later on today. And Gemini is a product that was released by Google. Gemini is integrated into a bunch of the Google platforms and suites. Some of you who use Gmail have seen it. Some of you who use Android devices obviously have used it, et cetera. A few of our developers internally use Gemini on their phones to do things like call screening, et cetera. So Gemini is Google's entry into the space. And right now, you would say, well, which one do I use? And the answer is it probably depends. All of these companies and all of these products are in an arms race. And the winner is the one that probably has the best and most trained models. But there will be a lot of competitors in this space for the next, who knows how many years. Really, as it kind of shakes out, you'll have to decide. And some of them do better at tasks than others. So it's probably not a question of which one, it's which ones. One of the ones that I did not include on here is a company called, or is a LLM called Mistral. It's also one that you can host internally for research purposes, and that's what it's used for a lot. Here we get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty, but people often think that an LLM is some sort of magic behind the scenes. And when you break it down into how it was trained and how they were built, they're not all that complicated under the hood. And that's minimizing it, of course, quite a bit, but they're not some black magic voodoo that's going on. This is all software code that's been written by humans and with the assistance of AI. But what a large language model does is it is a token-based system for predicting the next word that you are going to type. Is effectively what it comes down to. So when you start typing something in, it is already pre-processing that and trying to predict what your sentence is. And then similarly, when it's creating outputs, it's doing it by predicting the next best word for it to insert based on the context of the question that you put in, based on its training data, and based on some of the techniques that you might use to elicit a response to it. So it uses a transformer architecture. So when you type words, it puts those words into tokens, and it bases its predictive modeling on those tokens. They do pre-training with all of these models. So again, they're processing millions, trillions, quadrillions of tokens in order to understand how humans talk, understand information that's out there on the free internet, also understanding research documentation that maybe isn't part of the public domain. The better the LLM is trained, the better the output. And then parameters. The parameters just refer to how many items was this LLM trained on. So with Facebook's Meta, depending on your application, you can choose which model you want. Some of them have as many as 90 billion parameters. Some of them have as few as 4 billion parameters. And it just really depends on the outcome. So just last thing, and then we'll get a lot more interactive, I promise. When you give an LLM a prompt, the thing it does is it tokenizes your input. So it takes a common sentence. One of the things we'll do is go through Mary had a little lamb, and it's breaking those into tokens. It processes those tokens through its neural network, again, trying to assume that the next thing that you're going to say, and it calculates the probability of those distributions for what token should come next. So again, it's building sentences as you're typing, and then building its response as you're typing and as it's responding. So it selects a token based on these probabilities. It adds that token to the sequence, and then it repeats this process. Some of you have seen there's a little spinny wheel as you're typing into ChatGPT. That's what it's doing, is it's calculating what its response should be. Key mechanisms, just this will be part of the slide deck, but the last thing is probably the most germane thing here. So LLMs don't understand what you're saying. It's not another human. It's not another sentient sort of being. It's all probabilities and math. So they don't understand what you're saying, but they are a sophisticated pattern matching software that really have become incredibly good at mimicking how a human thinks and converses. So just to kind of illustrate this, we will go through just a really silly exercise, but just to point out how some of these LLMs are interpreting what you're saying. One thing to note about LLMs is they're not deterministic. So the same input won't always generate the same output. And because everything that you're doing is training it on what the next output should be. So if I type in Mary had a little lamb, it's already, as you can see down here, coming up with what it thinks I'm going to type. And then it's going to think about its response. And it just finishes this popular children's limerick for me. Mary had a little lamb. So again, we're coming up with different things, different responses. And if I go, Mary had a little. So here, ChatGPT is giving us a little bit of humor. It can see that I've already repeated this twice, so it uses my conversational history in it. You might say it's getting fed up with me, but it's continually learning, and it's continually evaluating our previous conversation for what it's about to do next. So it's not understanding what I'm doing, but it is generating text, and we'll do it one last time to see what it says. So now it's giving me the whole thing, all the verses. So this exercise, it shows you two things. One, that it takes the conversation and the context into account as you're working through the interface. And the second is that it's not deterministic. It's not going to give me the same output every single time based on the inputs. And this is critical as you're talking about doing things maybe in your BDC or maybe in your dealership where you're going to be giving the LLM some context. And I'll give you an example from the product that we have Volie working on right now is a product called Pulse. And Pulse is a call evaluation platform. So it is evaluating every phone call as it's coming in and then produces an evaluation as an output. And what we found when we were developing Pulse is that the same phone call and the same transcription wouldn't always give us the same results. And so that was things that we had to train the model and that we had to train our prompt generation to account for when we are doing these evaluations, that the same phone call won't necessarily. And so we had to give the LLM boundaries for how we want that evaluated. Therefore, we got better results and better outcomes. So back to slide deck. The next section and the remainder of our time together will be spent on prompts. So what you saw me just type into the ChatGPT user interface was a prompt. So a prompt is an input text that's given to the AI system that guides and instructs the AI on what to generate and respond with. It's effectively the starting point. Some of you have heard of things called prompt patterns. And it's not the case where you can just always ask the AI or the LLM to do something for you or give you an answer, much in the same way that Google search, right? When you go into Google search, typically you are formulating in your head, what are the phrases I need to type in here in order to get what I want? And some of you have learned some tricks like putting things in quotes or maybe referencing a specific website if you only want Google search to consider results on a specific website. Those are sort of tricks or hacks on how to hack the Google search engine. And the LLMs are no different. Embedded within them are certain logical and software patterns that effectively allow you to get and refine better results out of the LLM. And so a prompt pattern is just a structured template, or it's a structured approach for crafting effective prompts for large language models. And what these patterns do is they help you get better results. So a piece of feedback I've gotten almost universally, if I'm on the plane or if I'm at a family get together and people ask what we're working on or people ask what I do, and I talk to them about AI and they'll say something like, oh, I tried that ChatGPT once and it didn't give me what I want. I don't think it works. And oftentimes, most of the time, the problem is not with the fact that it didn't work or it didn't provide them good results. It's that they didn't craft their prompt or take the time to understand maybe there's a way to hack this. And so a prompt pattern are just that. And so we'll go through a few of them and you'll have to forgive me here. We'll kind of flip back and forth between the LLM, ChatGPT, and we'll use Claude a couple times just so that you can see the differences. But we're going to flip back and forth here as we go through the prompt patterns so that you can see examples of these. Direct prompting. Direct prompting is you're asking the LLM to produce some sort of an output, and that's it. They're usually pretty direct. This is mostly analogous to putting something in the Google search bar. You're searching for something, you're asking for something. So we'll go here. Oops, I have to stop. So a direct prompt is, I want you to create a recipe for a vegan diet in the Greek, probably has to be capital, in Greek cuisine. So this is an example of a direct prompt. So we've asked it to do something. We haven't really put any boundaries on it other than it should be vegan and it should be of the Greek cuisine. And this is what it outputted. Some of you have done this. Some of you have done something like, I have these 5 ingredients in my fridge. What can I make? I caution you on those, but sometimes they turn out okay. So this is an example of a direct prompt. Role prompting. This is a really powerful one, and it's probably one of the simpler ones that you can use to start helping get better results out of what you're asking the LLMs to do. So role prompting, you are telling the LLM to pretend it's someone in giving you your answer. So I'm going to say, act as a call grading expert in my call center and evaluate the things my agent is saying in this phone call. And then you would provide it what your agent said. Maybe it's a transcript of the phone call. Maybe it's something else. Agent says to customer, we don't have any cars in stock. And so you can see here, ChatGPT is telling us it's stepping into this role. And now it's going to pretend in its response that it is that expert call grader, and it's going to provide you with an answer based on that persona. Another way that you can use this is if you have kids, okay, and they're in school. Act as a 3rd grade teacher. My typing skills are on display here. And explain the US Civil War. So again, here I'm telling ChatGPT, I want you to pretend that you're something. And so in its response, it's going to give you a response that's tailored to that persona. So I do these exercises with my kids sometimes. My son's 11, middle daughter is 13, and my oldest is 16. And if they're struggling with something at school, I will have ChatGPT maybe create a study guide for multiplying or dividing fractions based on my children's grade or age. And it's going to come in, it's going to explain it in ways that, in this case, a 3rd grader could understand. So the persona pattern is extremely powerful for you. If you guys are, if all you on this call are giving maybe reports or a breakdown of something to executives, you could say, act as a dealer principal at my dealership and critique this proposal for me. And it could provide you feedback in the same way that an automotive dealer principal would be able to give it to you. So the persona pattern is extremely powerful. It's probably one of the most powerful and simplest techniques to master, because all you need to do is think of the persona that you want mimicked and have it craft its response accordingly. Chain of thought. So this is another powerful one. So oftentimes when we go to ChatGPT or Claude or Meta, we will ask it to do something and we're not quite sure about its answer. So what we can do is we can tell the LLM, I want you to explain yourself as you're crafting for me this response. So one way that you might do this, I'm going to start a new chat here. So that erases the history so it doesn't have context of what I was asking before. But chain of thought would be something like this. Please tell me what is better, chocolate or vanilla ice cream. I want justify your response and walk me through your thought pattern. This is a dumb one, but it will show you how you might be able to use this. So here it's walking you through what methodology that it used to come up with this. And this is more than you ever wanted to know about why vanilla ice cream is clearly the best. Oh, chocolate is better. Disagrees.
Yeah, I also agree with that. Vanilla is better. So we
It's
need
the
to
universal ice cream.
we need to we need to train these models better.
Clearly, clearly it missed on this one. But you could come up with some practical examples for this. You could,
Oh, keep reading the final, keep reading that. But if we're talking about flexibility, pairing, and crowd-pleasing ability, vanilla is the greatest of all time.
there you have it.
Yep.
It's the Swiss Army knife of frozen dairy. One way that I've seen BDCs use this is when you're looking at sell sheets for maybe if you handle all of the incoming internet traffic, et cetera, and a customer is looking for, what's the better deal? What's the better car? The Honda Civic that you have on your lot or the used Corolla that you have on your lot? So one way that I've seen BDCs use this is in compare contrast sell sheets, and it would then walk the agent as a training material, walk the agent through what are the thought processes that go through and what are the considerations that you might need to take into account when explaining that to a customer. So probably this one isn't as universally usable as the persona pattern, but this is a very powerful pattern for understanding why it's responding in certain ways. Certainly, I know my kids have used variations of this in some of their homework assignments or some of their research where they're effectively trying to step into the viewpoint of another, and you can have the GPT walk you through, or the LLM walk you through the nuances and some of the decision making. I would encourage those of you who are on my development team, this would be a great one to use for comparing different approaches to solving a development problem. So that's chain of thought. Prompt refinement. This is by far my favorite technique to use with any of the LLMs. Prompt refinement is where you are effectively giving it a prompt and then asking you how to make it better. So we're going to do this in real time. I'm going to create a new chat so we destroy my history. I want to know the better car, Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla. So it's going to generate me a response. Maybe I should have used a faster model here. So up here in the left-hand corner, just for those of you who aren't familiar, this is where you can choose ChatGPT, what model it's going to use. Some of these are faster than others, and some of these you don't need the sort of fidelity or precision in your responses you might with others. We'll use 4.0, which is one of their most advanced that is in general release for purposes of this. So it's still working on its response. So it's going to break this down, and it's created for me a quick little graph. So prompt refinement is, I want you to create a more specific prompt for my last request. Please create the prompt only. So in this case, I'm telling the LLM, I'm not sure I did a good job in asking the question, but you know yourself, vis-a-vis the LLM understands what parameters and what kinds of questions it responds better to, and it's going to now help me create a better prompt. And so I could use this prompt, and it's going to now give me a better response. And I can keep doing this until I have the prompt that I absolutely love and that absolutely gives me the depth of response that I'm looking for. So again, if you first don't succeed in your initial question with ChatGPT or Claude or Meta, I would encourage you, the first thing you do after you feel like you haven't succeeded is to try it again and have it help you craft the prompt. So it's still working on this. And you'll see, again, it didn't give me the same response this time. It gave me a more finite and summarized version here. The other added benefit of the Toyota Corolla is that after a while, they spit their hubcaps off. So it's less weight that you're driving around with.
That's a jab at me. I have a 2014 Corolla and it's missing hubcaps. But if you've noticed any 2014 Corollas that out there, their chances are they're missing hubcaps.
So there you have it. ChatGPT didn't know about the missing hubcaps. Another one that is extremely powerful is what's called the flipped interaction or question and answer pattern. In this pattern, you're driving the LLM to give you a result or a prompt that you want, but maybe you don't quite know enough about the things that it would need in order to craft your prompt. And so again, I'm going to start with a new one here. I want more information on a trip we are planning to Paris this winter. And here's the kick. Please ask me a list of questions in order to better respond. And now if I hit enter here, it's going to spit out 1, 2, 5, 10 questions. But what you do, again, just like in conversation, please ask the first question and then move on once I have responded. So it's going to start asking me these questions. I don't know how many it's going to give me. Cultural. So what it's driving at is creating a response for me that is more tailored and more precise than I would have gotten if I would have just said, I'm planning a trip to Paris. What should I do? My wife wants to go to the Louvre and see the Mona Lisa. So now it's going to start its response. And again, it's tailored based on the questions that it asked, knowing that it knows how it works better. And we're going to just continue this interaction until it is satisfied. So now it's summarizing what I've asked for. Oh, no access. Oops, walk. And you can just let it go. It says last question. So some ways that this might be helpful for you. When a new vehicle model is released, you can start to ask the GPT to help you put down talking points for your agents to talk about a new vehicle, things like inventory, availability, etc., options, it's things like that. You could also use it to create cheat sheets for your agents. Maybe it's policies, maybe it's things about your dealers, directions under construction, things like that. You can use this pattern in order to provide a huge depth of information that's optimized to the way that ChatGPT and the other LLMs want to interact with you. And it's a great way, if you don't quite know all of the dimensions of the question you're asking, it's a great way to have the LLM help you elicit those. So here's my itinerary. And again, it came up with this based on the questions and my responses. So this question and answer pattern is extremely powerful for you to get the results that you want. This one, the alternative approaches, this is one where you could ask the GPT a question or give the GPT a suggestion or a prompt, and you can then ask it to compare and contrast maybe another approach or another prompt pattern that might be more effective in getting to your question. So we'll do this, create a new one. I have agents that are trying to keep their under 5 minutes. What suggestions for a prompt would you give me? So what I've asked the GPT or the LLM to do in this case is help me out here. I don't know the right approach in order to get an answer to this question. And frankly, it was a pretty limited question. I didn't give it much information, but it's going to give me suggestions for how I might approach solving this problem. Again, this is incredibly powerful if you don't quite know where to start. One of the things that most people are really hesitant to do is let the AI teach them how to use the AI, but it's really one of the most powerful techniques that you can get on any of these questions or projects that you have where you think ChatGPT or one of the other LLMs could be really helpful, is just ask it, what are the approaches I should use in order to solve this problem? So just a few more left here. Gameplay. This would be a huge one for your BDCs. So I'll tell you how I use it personally, and then I'll tell you how I've seen our accounts, and I've helped some of our accounts do this professionally. The way that I've used this personally is if I want to learn a new computer language. So what better to teach me how to write code than something that knows all of the syntax and all of the documentation on code? And so you can do things like new chat window. I would like to learn the basics of PHP in 10 questions or less. Please come up quiz for me on learning PHP. PHP is a programming language. So as you're building these for your agents, you can come up with the prompt that creates a quiz effectively, or a game. And in that quiz, maybe it's on the fundamentals of your dealership. Maybe it's on the fundamentals of making an inbound or taking an inbound scheduling call for Mercedes versus Lexus. Maybe it's things like rebuttal handling or objection handling. You can come up with these quizzes and have them do this actually in real time. So here's my first question. So it is this one. And now it's going to give me the next question in this quiz. And you can use this to drill your agents. You can use this for helping your kids with fractions or math or whatever it is. Maybe it's a unit on European history that they're struggling with in history class. I don't know. But this is a great way of having you use the LLM to generate or effectively study materials for your agents. Maybe your managers, your team leads in the BDC, they need help with some of the basics. And so you can create these, you can have the LLM create these custom training courses for you in real time and make sure that the agents are schooled, and your team leads and maybe even yourself are schooled on whatever the subject matter is. So this is an extremely powerful one to use in your BDCs as well as at home with your kids, or if you wanted to learn a foreign language, this would be another great way to another great use for that. It's called the gameplay or the quiz pattern. Context manager. This one is one that we've used a lot at Volie to effectively give the LLM boundaries. And so the way that you use this is you ask the GPT a question or you give it a prompt, and then you tell it what information it can use in order to craft that response. And so you can tell it, don't give me information that is not within the bounds of this document. So in later courses, I think in the third course, we'll go through how you can upload documents to ChatGPT and create custom FAQs for your agents. So maybe you have training documents or training materials in a PDF or in Google Sheets or in Word docs, etc. You can actually upload those into ChatGPT. And then when you're crafting questions for those, if you wanted to do a game for your agents on the training materials, you can tell ChatGPT, only use the information that I've uploaded. So I won't show an example of this one today. It's kind of tough, but this is one where you can tell ChatGPT what information it's allowed to use in its response. Another one that I won't show an example of today, but just the verification or reflection pattern. When you get a response from ChatGPT, you can ask it to effectively show its work. So I want you to tell me why what you said is true, effectively is what you're asking. So you can use this one for training materials. You can use this one to perfect something you're doing. Maybe it's that Honda Corolla or the Civic Corolla comparison, and you can ask it to effectively prove its work. So here's where I'll open it up, Jake. I'll rely on you to be the moderator here. But are there things? This is where it gets mostly interactive. Are there things that you've tried to use an LLM for where you have maybe not been successful in the past, where you've said, it just doesn't work for that? This is your time to phone a friend, and I'll see what help I can do. And Jake, if we get a lot of these, if you can make a list, and we will do our best to get through them either after the call or in weeks to come before the next session. But this is your chance to phone a friend and have me help you out, or maybe walk through some examples of how you might solve a particular problem.
Yeah, so put any prompts or questions in the Q&A or the chat down here on the Zoom. And as people are thinking here, Peter, let's take a minute here and kind of walk through the list of, if you're a BDC manager, how are you using these? Rattle off the top 3 or 5 things that you think you would use. uh, one of these LLM models for?
The number one thing I think I would use is training documents. The providing your agents with concise training materials and quizzes, et cetera, to get your agents up to speed faster. That I think is one of the more powerful uses of the LLM. We have a number of dealers that use Volley that have put copious amounts of information, whether it's tire specials or loaner policies or can't schedule on Thursdays after 4 or no alignments on Tuesdays, all of those sorts of nuances that your agents stumble on phone calls where you get calls afterwards chewing you out for an agent doing something that they shouldn't have done that probably is buried in some manual somewhere. Creating your own custom GPTs, which we'll go through in later courses, but even just using the GPT to help you consolidate those training materials is the number one use. The number two use that I've talked to a lot of our stores on is script generation. So a lot of you in Volley, and if you're not using Volley, I know we have some prospects on this call that use other platforms to give your agents talk tracks and script adherence reminders. Being able to refresh your scripts every once in a while. We talked to a BDC manager a couple of weeks ago who hadn't changed their scripts since they onboarded with Volley 3 years ago. And that's great if they're working, but it would having an LLM take a fresh stab at it maybe a quick win for you in your BDC or in your dealership is product training, script generation, et cetera. And then the other one that I've heard a lot of our people using is rebuttals. So they will take a list of the most common objections that a customer has. Maybe it's, why wouldn't I get this done at Jiffy Lube? But to create a series of fresh rebuttals on objections that customers are having to scheduling an appointment or getting a recall done, or even as advanced as declined labor. We've seen our BDCs used ChatGPT or Claude to generate rebuttals. It's just a great way to get a fresh spin on it. So those would be the top three that I've seen be really successful. The fourth that I will just mention that we'll go through, and like I said, I think it's the fourth class, is unlocking the power of the documents that you have and creating custom GPTs so that agents can just chat their questions while they're on a phone call is an incredibly powerful use of the GPT. That's more of an advanced operation, but once you understand and do it, that would be the fourth.
Okay. So we have a couple of people who mentioned in here that they've used these tools to help with scripts. It's easy, saves them time, and like you said, it's good to refresh them occasionally. Someone else had asked had mentioned that they're struggling to generate phone call scenarios to review in meetings with their teams, overcoming objections, etc. That type of stuff. So how would you prompt that?
Sure, let's take a stab at it. So I would probably use Claude for this. Claude is maybe a little bit more artistic. I think it does a little bit better job with scripts. So I'm gonna move this out of the way here now. So I am a call center manager. Actually, I'm gonna say you, a call center. Okay, so the first thing I would try is persona pattern. So I'm telling it, you are a call center manager, and you are going to train my agents on how to overcome 3 examples that I've listed, but then I've also asked it to enumerate other things and generate objections for them. So we'll try this. Again, one of the most common things that I see and hear about when talking to people is they tried it once and they gave up. What the power of the LLM is in the conversation that it stores and remembers about you, as well as any previous interactions that you've had with it. So when Claude is thinking, it displays this little starburst. Oh, that failed. We won't use Claude. So it has unexpected capacity constraints right now. That was a unplanned bump.
While this is going, we had someone ask about if the meeting recording will automatically be sent. I'm not sure, candidly, what the Zoom does to, if it automatically sends to registrants. If not, look for it. We'll post this on our YouTube later this week. So on Volie's channel. So you'll definitely catch the recording there if it doesn't go automatically.
Okay, so um, so here's the prompt that we gave it. I'm sure that there are ways that we could refine this. If I was a better BDC manager or one at all, maybe I would have even better vocabulary to give it. But what it's done is it's given me a response along with the objections that I enumerated, and then it added these others. One of the things that we could do is we could ask it to refine these. So again, prompt refinement is huge. Probably what I would do next is I would try it again, and I would use the flipped interaction pattern where we ask it to ask us questions so that it could craft a better response. I think we'd probably get a little bit better results that way. Maybe not much, but that might be one of the second techniques I would try. But I think the key here is effectively tricking the LLM into thinking it's someone of a particular persona. So that would be my first suggestion. And then I would try it immediately again. And I would say, let's try this again. I am struggling. And just so everybody knows, my typing with the typos, the LLM largely won't care. So I correct them as a matter of being maybe OCD, but the LLM largely will figure out what you're talking about. And again, on the question and answer pattern or the flipped interaction pattern, if you don't tell it to meter itself vis-a-vis ask one question at a time, it's just going to spit out a list of questions. And usually it's smart enough to figure out what response goes with which answer, but I like to do it so that it's just asking me one question at a time and we're going through question by question. So you can see already, and I won't finish this out, but you can see already we're probably going to get a much better response because it knew to ask questions that I didn't know to ask in the first place. So this is why that flipped interaction pattern is so powerful, is because it's going to tell you what it needs in order to answer the question that you effectively didn't ask.
Yeah, I think that's a great, I think you can see there, how that's going to go through line by line and then craft that. And then once you have that, you could even go and then say, hey, please refine this to a one-sheeter or something.
Yep.
And make it pretty neat there. Well, good.
To Jake's point, we can do things like this. Please save the first response as a so here it's going to go through and it will actually save this as a PDF that you can then just click on and download, provided it doesn't make me look foolish. But those are the types of things, because it's a computer behind the scene, it of course knows how to create a PDF and it can make it easy on you. What other
we have a
questions
couple, we have another prompt that came in, and I can definitely see, why this one has been, tough to get it to do what it wants. And then while we're waiting for this, though, let's ask a couple questions about AI in general. Can you walk through the pricing and usage structures briefly for these? Is Claude free? Is ChatGPT free, et cetera? And please limit your response to I was trying to, like we were inputting, but limit your response to a 30-second answer.
all of these companies have some version of a free plan. Claude has a free plan that limits you to a certain number of effectively requests and responses. It's a token limit. So at the beginning, we went through how the LLM tokenizes what you're asking and then tokenizes its output. Claude has a token limit that they place on it. ChatGPT similarly has free plans. So all of these, I would say all, maybe there's an exception, but all of them have some variety of a free plan. And when we wrap up in the wrap-up slide, there's a couple of things to maybe mention in there. The paid plans really just give you access to more of their models. So maybe their most advanced model is only available to paid users. But by and large, all of these companies have free plans that you can access. And then they're not incredibly expensive when you do start to pay for them if you run out of tokens. Claude is $20 a month. I believe OpenAI is $20 a month for their most basic plan. So they're very, very affordable compared to the output that you can generate from them and the time that they potentially save you.
That was perfect timing because your prompt is done.
It was perfect timing. So again, it's giving me a file that I can then download, and the formatting is probably crappy. So maybe if I were smarter, I would have asked for it in Word, and then I could open it up in Microsoft Word or Google Docs and edit it. Maybe I want to put my logo on it, etc. But it's a very simple thing you can do if all you need is a document out of it, and you don't want to cut and paste. Like in my itinerary for Paris, I could have copy and pasted that out into an Excel sheet or document, but I also could have just as easily asked for it in a different format because the LLM doesn't care.
So one other AI question, then we'll get to the other prompt that was asked for help with. Can you explain again exactly what a token is?
A token is a segment of letters. And so sometimes a token is just multiple letters strung together, but it's a fixed length of characters. And it varies based on the LLM, but a sentence with 10 words in it, it's probably depending, average length of each word is 3 characters. It's probably 5 tokens, 8 tokens, maybe. But it's not always lined up with word for word or word count. It breaks it up into smaller chunks that are the same size. So a token is a word or a fragment of a word.
So then for pricing on these plans, when they price it by the token or the free plan is by the token, the free, another way to kind of word that to the uninitiated would be that is an amount of words or characters that you can ask it.
Yes, yes. And all of your request and its response counts as against that token count. So what you ask it and what it responds with accrue to that token count. One of the things you can do to get around that is exactly what I did here. So all of the characters in this document don't add up to tokens. So that's one way that you can get around it. Having said that, if it's not in the chat, it doesn't have context of it. So if you just had asked this to be a PDF in the first place with no output on the screen, it wouldn't know what's in that PDF in terms of its conversational context. So there's a downside to doing it that way. I have one of the patterns that we didn't go over because it's not necessarily super germane to this audience, but it's called the outline pattern, where if you were going to maybe write a training course that was 20 modules long, you could ask it to create an outline, which would be the overview. And then in order to flesh it out and add more context and more rich content for each of those bullet points, in one of your responses, you could say, okay, now give me the response, now give me 500 words or less on bullet point 3A. And that's another way to get around some of the response size limits.
Okay, we have one other prompt here. So someone had said that they tried asking this question and they didn't feel like it was super helpful. The question was, what are best marketing practices for service BDC in the automotive industry?
So let's just try it with what I would call the flipped interaction pattern. So I am a service. So I'm one of the 50% that says please. Okay, so already it's smarter than I would have been in my question. So not knowing the specifics, but vehicles. So as an interesting point, when I first started using ChatGPT, it did not use the term DMS. This was maybe a couple of years ago, but it did not know the term DMS.
Well, they're certainly moving quickly, right?
We just had a dealer in for a 20 group that said that buy three, get one for $1 is their best promotion that they run. Oh, so 4.0 is their latest and greatest. I don't have enough free credits for the 4.0, so that's what it's telling me. I can upgrade my plan here. So now it's going to downgrade me to 4.0 mini.
Your limit also only takes 16 minutes to reset. So it's not
Yes.
like you are that cut off.
I'm shooting from the hip here. I don't know who this dealer is that asked the question, but I'm doing my best to impersonate you. "14 questions you're going to have to go through at least when you do this."
$15.
We hear this all the time from some of our dealers is the BDC is doing their job, but the dealer is just hopelessly booked out. We have a store that operates in the southern US, and they're struggling with technicians, struggling with bays, etc. And I it's got to be frustrating for you when you're doing your part. Oh, 17th.
I wonder what would happen if you said, wrap it up. It's enough questions. Give me a plan.
So I think if what you were looking for here was a calendar, I might have specified that in the prompt in terms of best practices. But this is where I would start. And the more you do these similar types of prompts, the better results you're going to get. I'm very confident that most of the users of these tools just give up too early and don't ask it to refine it. Are there any more prompt brainbusters, Jake, that we can just write down?
There were a couple. Someone had asked, "Hey, how would you respond to the 'we're booked out for service' question?" Actually, so and then I think we'll be good to wrap up after that.
Okay. So since I busted my limits on GPT, we so direct pattern. We're just asking it, and we will go from there. So it gave me what I asked for. Our team is working on. Oh, getting nuked on Grok too. That's because I'm not signed in. I would keep refining this. I would start with direct on this, and then I would keep refining it. You probably have more inside information on what's causing those delays. I would also just anecdotally, we did a webinar with Richard Danahy with the Ed Morse group. Is that on YouTube, Jake?
No, it is not going to be published.
It is not. Okay. Well, foot and mouth there. Some of the folks have really good relationships with their service directors, their fixed op directors, et cetera. And I would encourage you to work with them to help you better handle the routine maintenance and services. So, things like oil changes, tires, anything safety related. I would encourage you to work with your service directors on how to get those people in no matter what, for the things that they kind of have to get done right away. And I would also encourage you to use the LLM to maybe craft better word tracks around it. That would be the approach I would take.
Sounds great. Well, I think that's a lot of great information. We had a lot of people post in, thanks for the information. This was great. Type comments. We hope, we're glad to hear that. And like we said before, I mean, some of this isn't even Volley related, and it's just interesting things that Peter wanted to walk you all through. So we appreciate you taking the time. And Peter, I know you have a wrap-up slide, and then let's give everyone 5 minutes back.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing to remember, and we talked about this throughout the session, is LLMs are conversational. So they retain history of what you've talked about in your chats. And I would encourage you to leverage this. So if you do a repetitive task often, you can refer back to it as long as it's in your conversational history. You see, when I created a new chat, it blasted the previous history, so it voids that. But if there are times when I will have multiple chat windows open and with multiple subjects, and I don't clear them because I'm asking it to do the same sort of thing over and over again. And if I like the result that I got earlier on, I can tell it to give me the same type of result that you responded to me with earlier on X subject. So remember that they are conversational. The second one, and this is sort of a data safety thing, but no matter what plan you're on, unless you're hosting the LLM yourself, your data is out there. So I would strongly discourage putting non-public information about customers, et cetera, in there. Even as tempting as it might be for spreadsheet manipulation or data manipulation, I would say that any data that you put out within ChatGPT, et cetera, you should make sure it is all public domain type data. And then the last thing, and I didn't go through this specifically, but really the power of prompt patterns is when you don't use just one. So I would encourage you, and again, these slides will be sent out. I would encourage you to use patterns in combination with one another to get the result that you want. The flipped interaction where it asks questions plus the persona pattern vis-a-vis you are a service manager, that is an incredibly powerful combination that I use almost every day for internal work. So I would encourage you to use these in combination. And then the last thing that I included in this slide is a PDF that was written by one of the professors at Vanderbilt University on these prompt patterns. So it goes into much more detail. It's a super heady read, but if you want, a lot of the material in this presentation was based on classes that I took, extension classes that I took at Vanderbilt. And this is one of the PDFs that was put out by one of the professors there, the actual head of their CS department. So I would encourage you, if you really want to help falling asleep tonight, grab that PDF and read it in its entirety.
Sounds awesome. We do have someone just chimed in that link does not work.
I can download this, Jake, and you can include it with the email that you send out with the recording. I don't know why it wouldn't work.
Well, I'll tell you who specifically asked and said.
Okay, I can just forward it
you
to
share
them.
it with her. Yeah.
Yep.
Sure. Sounds great. Well, thanks so much for joining, everyone. Peter, do you want to give a sneak peek for what's coming at the end of April, or not?
Oh, sure. I'll just share the rough course outline. Not pretty. End of April, we'll be enhancing customer interactions. So here we're going to go into a much deeper dive. This will probably be a little bit shorter of a session, and it will be incredibly interactive. I will have some examples of things that we've done for internal training, et cetera. But really, this one is all about scripts and rebuttals and how to use the LLMs for supporting multilingual content. So if you have a bunch of scripts and rebuttals that you've done in English, if you have call centers that are multilingual, then this is an incredibly powerful and easy way of getting that translated effectively for free. So the next one will be all about the customer side of all of your interactions.
Awesome. That should be a great session, and we hope you all look forward to it. So Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Yeah,
Peter,
thank
thanks
you.
for taking the time, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.